City Council special meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 15, 2022. It is 5:33 p.m. We are at Council Chambers for the City Hall Building, 100 South Monroe Street in Eagle Pass, Maverick County, Texas. We will begin with the establishment of quorum. We do have a quorum today. We have Mayor Pro Tem Ramon that is with us online, and we have Councilman Diaz, Councilwoman Cruz, and myself. Absent today is Councilman Billy Davis. Moving on to a moment of reverence. At this time, I would like to take a moment of reverence for those struggling with cancer. There's a lot of people with cancer in our community and all over the world. Thank you. Citizens' communications and recognitions. Madam Secretary?
We have none submitted, Mayor.
Okay. We will proceed with the consent agenda. We do have a consent agenda contained in this meeting. A consent agenda is designed to assist in making the meeting shorter and more efficient. Items left on the consent agenda may not be discussed when the consent agenda comes before council. If any council member wishes to discuss a consent agenda item, please tell me now, and I will remove the item from the consent agenda and place it in an appropriate place on the meeting agenda so it could be discussed when the item is taken up by council. At this time, I'll ask council members if there's any item that you all would like to remove from the consent agenda. And we have 5 items on the consent agenda. Okay, we'll go to item number 1. Second reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A, zoning ordinance of the City of Eagle Pass, Texas, to amend Section 6D, intensity of use for R2 residential districts, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date. Item 2. Second reading of an ordinance amending Section 22-92, Article 6, Chapter 22, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Public Places of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Eagle Pass by adding new subsection 2G and amending subsection 6A and F to set new liability coverage, policies, procedures, and fees for leagues, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date. Item 3, second reading of an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 budget adopted by ordinance number 2021-17 to adjust citywide revenues and appropriations to fund current year commitments. Finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date. Item 4, consideration and possible approval of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eagle Pass, Texas, authorizing the use of competitive sealed proposals as a method of purchase that provides the best value to the municipality for a feasibility study and consulting services for a recreation and aquatic center. Item 5, consideration and possible approval of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eagle Pass, Texas, authorizing the use of competitive sealed proposals as a method of purchase that provides the best value to the municipality for the market and compensation study. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve these items. We have a motion by Councilwoman Cruz.
Second.
And a second by Councilman Diaz. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We'll move on to item number 6, ordinances. Consideration and possible approval of an ordinance changing the zoning district classification of Lot 18, Block 1 of Paso del Rio subdivision, also known as 1953 Del Rio Boulevard, from B2 Central Business District to R3A Apartment District, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date. Mr. Madera.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Let me just get this PowerPoint. right, well, I'll start talking while we see if I can get this going. So the applicant, the property owner is Ivan A. Davila. The property in question is at 1953 Del Rio Boulevard. It is currently zoned B2, Central Business District. And their initial request is to change to R3A for the purposes of apartment construction. The parcel size is 17,400 square feet. And the vicinity is off Del Rio Boulevard. It's primarily business use. It's directly behind the Dollar General. There's a new construction also adjacent to this, which will be a home health office. And I wanted to show you some of these aerial maps. We do have some in the vicinity. It's approximately half a mile north, going towards Del Rio. We do have some apartments when you get to the Las Palmas, Rio Grande, and then in front of the Rio Grande, there's also a couple smaller units that are directly abutting Del Rio Boulevard. All right, let's see if we got this going here now. Thank you. So here's a vicinity map. The blue arrow shows you where we are on Del Rio Boulevard, fairly near Veterans. Here's what I wanted to show you on the surrounding uses. So the blue arrow shows the property in question. Directly below is retail, Dollar General. The office I mentioned. Across the street is additional retail, fairly new development, which went up and got occupied very quickly. Very successful development. Further down we have the hotel where currently Bella Italian is. Some additional office retail, and then towards the top of the screen is where we get to the apartments that I referenced. And then there's also some multi-family mobile home park in the top corner, in addition to some additional retail and business along the area. But based on this vicinity and the ideal, master planning and future land use of trying to maintain the thoroughfares as B1 neighborhood business district use, the recommendation from the department, as well as the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, was to deny the request, maintain it as a B2. So B2 would still allow them anything under B1, which does include anything under R1, R2, and R3. So they were seeking to do multiple apartments. Duplex would be allowed per the zoning, but not more than two.
Repeat that. They can still do a duplex
Yes.
or mixed use?
Yeah, per B1 use, R1, R2, and R3 is allowed.
Okay.
And B2 also allows anything that's allowed under B1. So the duplex would fall under there. R3 does fall under those allowed uses. However, apartments, R3A, does not fall under the B1 or B2. That's only allowed once you get to the B3 district. We don't have mixed use specifically in ordinance at this point. That's something we're seeking to do in the future, but we do see that as a potential here. And I think at this point we would probably look at it as a case-by-case basis because it's not strictly listed in ordinance at this point.
And again, this is a property that's right next to the Dollar General. And
That's correct.
That new medical office business, right?
Exactly. They're between the Dollar General and the new medical home health. I believe it's called St. Isabel Home Health.
Right.
It's directly between those two properties where this rezone application is.
So I noticed that your presentation says that your department did receive one letter in opposition. Did they express any points in their letter of opposition?
They did, and they also were present at one of our planning and zoning meetings. They expressed they were a resident in the Roberto Manuel.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the name of the street. Yeah, Roberto Manuel
Right.
behind. And their concern was the height of potential apartment buildings that would be overlooking into their backyard and the privacy concern of that. So he said he basically understood that he was backing up to business district and expected businesses to go up there, but was not anticipating apartment use. that was a concern made.
I know that we have both chiefs present. Do we anticipate any safety concerns with the location of placing an R3 in that placement?
The apartment use? I don't believe so, but if you'd like, to pose that question, we do have the chief of police. So you're saying if it was approved
If it
for
was
apartments,
approved, are there any
what
safety concerns?
the concerns would be with the additional traffic? Okay.
That could be so, sir. We would have to actually analyze the area. I'm not fully can answer your question at this point, but you do make a good point. We definitely need to see how much traffic will be picking up and analyze and give you a better response more than anything.
Okay.
In looking at the planning and zoning meeting that you had last week, I did see the commissioners there. They analyzed the issue very thoroughly. The fact that in that area, you mostly have businesses. Yes, you do have apartments on Del Rio Boulevard, but they're more towards the south of Del Rio Boulevard, pretty far from where this area is, or not far, but you
It's about
can
half a mile.
definitely tell that there's a cutoff, right? So,
It should be basically up here, and then down this way, all the way till you get towards Second Street or the curve towards Ceylon.
Right.
There's no other apartments in
there's
any
no
of
other
that.
apartments. So,
So,
Two bedrooms, one bathroom? Two bedrooms or?
Their proposal right now is just a rezone. They give us a very preliminary idea what they would like to do at that point, but they are 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 2-bedroom, 1.5 baths that they anticipate.
And they could fit 5 buildings on the lot, right?
That's what the preliminary sketch is showing.
I think that the neighbors in the back, that residential area, I think that does pose a valid concern about having multi-story buildings looking into the yards. So, and you said it was just one family that did?
We only received
Okay.
one letter, one opposition notice, which was that one.
Will it change in a way if they're not 2-story or maybe if they stay as a 2-story, maybe put the window on the back, maybe on the side? Will that maybe be a little bit more?
Once a rezone is done, there's not really, I guess, unless you put those conditions, there's nothing that
But we might put
could
conditions.
prohibit them from where they put their windows. That's an interesting concept that we wanted to get into those specific details. But generally, once the rezone is done, they can build it as they would wish.
So again, your recommendation is to deny
To
this?
deny the rezone and maintain it as a B2 in its existing zoning district.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Diaz to deny the rezone. Do we have a second? Mayor Pro Tem Ramon, can you hear us? Just want to make sure that you're still on. Ms. Ramon?
No, I mean, we have a forum.
Okay.
I'll text you, Mayor.
So we have a motion. I can step out of my chair and go and second, right?
Correct.
Yes,
Okay,
you can
I'll-
relinquish the chair.
I'll relinquish my chair and I'll second Mr. Diaz's motion to deny the request. Discussion? All those in favor?
I will abstain.
We have 2 in favor, Councilman Diaz and myself, and Councilwoman Cruz abstains. So this request is denied.
Well, your motion to deny the request does not have the majority votes.
Right.
So no action's been taken.
We
And
have a
the,
first and second. We're waiting on Ms. Ramon.
Mhm.
She needs to vote, right?
we can wait for her to vote, or it still doesn't pass because the action item was
Right.
not to approve it.
Okay.
So you can just move on. It didn't get passed.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the next item then. And then for the record, Ms. Ramon did not vote on this.
O'Connor is absent.
Okay. Item 7, consideration and possible approval of an ordinance changing the zoning district classification of an .5229 acre lot located in Day Land and Cattle Company, Survey 835 and a half, Abstract 1240, called to be located in Abstract 1111, Investing Deed, Maverick County, Texas, and described in conveyance document to Eagle Sky RE LLC, recorded in document number 2113307 of the Maverick County Official Public Records, Maverick County, Texas, also known as 2258 Garrison Street, from R1, First One Family Dwelling District to B3 General Business District. Finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. So what you have before you is, again, another rezone property, vacant property located at 2258 Garrison Street, currently zoned as R1, and asking for to rezone into a B3 General Business District, just to comply with the surrounding zoning districts in the immediate area, which are all commercial. Property is approximately 22,700 square feet, and it's located off of Garrison, near or right next door to the Burger King and in between the Consulate Mexicano.
Right. Okay.
Here's a survey of the property, which by the way, they will be coming back to P&Z and council for the plating of that one property.
So moved.
Okay.
This is a zoning map, our master plan, and our zoning map.
Excellent.
I'll
Okay.
second.
We do have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Cruz and a second by Councilman Diaz. Discussion. All those in favor? Unanimous. Ms. Ramon, you still out? Okay, no votes. All right. Item 8, consideration and possible approval of an ordinance providing for the extension of certain boundary limits of the city of Eagle Pass, Texas, and the annexation of certain territory lying adjacent to and adjoining the present boundary limits of said city, consisting of a tract consisting of a total of 7.72 acres, being a portion of the MVN LLC described in meets and bounds indeed out of Survey 3, Abstract 1007, and Survey 6, Abstract 1110, said 7.72 acre tract being portion of a 32.884 acre tract conveyed from Maverick County Investments LTD to MVN Enterprises LLC by deed record book 1664, page 158 of Official Public Records of Maverick County, authorizing implementation of the service plan for said territory, assigning thereto permanent zoning district classification, all as described herein, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
So what you have here is an annexation submitted by Tech Services, property located off of Spur 16 or extension of 2nd Street, right behind Latigo Apartments or the Legacy Villas Apartments. This is the area in question.
Right.
And, well, that's another.
We've discussed this before.
Yes, we
Council.
have.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Cruz,
Second.
a second by Councilman Diaz. Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, consideration and possible approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 16, Article 1, Division 2, Health and Sanitation, Section 16-8A and 16-11A through M, to provide for new provisions for mobile/temporary food vendors, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date. Mr. Madera, you have some information for us?
Yes, Mayor. So we have the previous information in case we need to reference that, and then some more specific ordinance changes that would tie to the direction that we received from council. So Again, the key things here, what does our ordinance allow, what do other cities allow, impact on neighboring properties, zoning districts and compatibility. And this is the existing section of ordinance that shows what's prohibited for mobile or temporary food vendors. So here are some of the specific changes that are recommended for your consideration. So one of them is letter D, leave any mobile temporary food unit unattended. So that's one that is fairly consistent in many other cities we see. However, we do realize that many of our vendors do leave their units at their private property locations where they are renting. So one option would be there to strike that one out if it's something council is comfortable with them continuing to do in leaving them overnight. The next one is on, again, the existing is on the left, and that's letter F. It says that it's prohibited to sell food for immediate consumption unless he has available for public use his own trash receptacles, which is available for his patrons' use. This one's just mostly verbiage. I guess a little outdated with the way it is specific to male.
Yes.
So we just tried to...
He or she.
Yeah, so we just made it more generic to sell food for immediate consumption unless a trash receptacle is provided to patrons' use. But that one is just keeping the same intent, just changing the wording. The next one is the distance. So currently it says 100 feet of any place of business, of any merchant who sells food. So that would actually include even other mobile food units. So this is two areas here that we're looking at possibly modifying. One is to change that to 150 feet from 100, and the second would be, second part of that, first one is unless the location is on private property. I believe that's what council stipulated. If they have consent, written consent and approval of the landowner, then we assume, they are able to be there, whether without the, consent or being near another food establishment.
So just to be clear, this would only apply to streets, public streets?
Public streets.
Public areas?
Being near another food establishment. Correct. And then the second part would be, depending on how council chooses to move with this one, you may consider also adding in consent from nearby food vendors as an option. Let's say they sell some type of food near another food establishment that are non-competing. One maybe has pizza and the other has tacos. And so the brick and mortar may not feel any competition and may consent to it. So that would potentially be another option to add in that could be allowed with the consent of the restaurant. So that's another thing to look at. The next one is under letter M. This would be a new suggested item. It's not currently in the existing ordinance. And this one would be to operate a mobile food unit on a public right-of-way in the central business district without approval from the city manager. And that essentially he could designate a committee or group such as police department and economic development, along with maybe planning, to verify safety and compatibility when someone is asking for a location on a public right-of-way. Another option could also be, instead of only being in central business district, broaden that to anywhere in the city if they want to be on a public right-of-way.
So just for clarification purposes, it would be the new suggested item M to prohibit, right?
All of these are prohibits.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Prohibit operating on a public right-of-way without city approval.
Okay.
And then, so we could be looking at either central business district or citywide, depending on what council thinks would better. Those are some options. And looking at other cities, those are some things that we've seen in other cities. Some prohibit it outright, some specific to the central business district, and some ask for specific approval from the city. The next one is also a new suggested item, and this is providing tables, again, prohibited items, providing tables, chairs, awnings, or other seating or eating area around the mobile unit. This is something the city of San Antonio has, and I think if they are a mobile unit, the whole intent is kind of grab and go and not turn into a dine-in location. Essentially now they would be a restaurant with the tables and seating. So this is another suggested item for council consideration. Next one is from a separate section, 16-8. This is no longer under the prohibited items for mobile, but it's for the fees. So the change here would be in red. Before it was $150 per year for any food establishment for their annual fee. A suggestion would be for $150 for restaurants, meaning permanent brick and mortar locations, and $250 for mobile food units, being that the mobile food units don't have the property taxes and many of the other overhead costs that may be associated with brick and mortar. So again, something else for council consideration. And then a few other things that we saw, we don't have them in the draft or the red line version in your packet, but something we saw in many other cities is allowing them on developed lots only. In other words, they would not be able to go and park on a vacant lot where it's just dirt and undeveloped, because then you have again the unit itself and then patrons and people coming in and parking, all driving on unpaved dirt. Another one is, and that actually also ties into restroom facilities, which will be another item, but also if it's undeveloped, they may not have any facility, such as for an employee, they're going to be there 6-8 hours working and they have nowhere to go to the restroom nearby. So that's another part of the developed lots. The next one is paved surfaces, whether to allow the units to park on unpaved surfaces. Restroom requirements, whether the city would require that they provide them to their employees at a minimum or not. That's something that several other cities do require.
Could it be a portable restroom?
Could be. That'll be fine.
Okay.
The next one is park facilities while concession is available. I found this one specifically in the city of McAllen. They had this line in there, which I think, with our sports complex and the investment that were made, those are probably something that we may consider as well. Zoning districts, many also strictly prohibit any in the residential districts. We don't have anything that touches on zoning in our current prohibited items. And then another key one, which was brought up by our chief of police, was our current ordinance specifies that the mobile unit cannot impede pedestrian traffic, like along the sidewalk, if they're parked along a curb on a right-of-way. It does not mention anything about impeding vehicular traffic. So that is something we saw in a few other cities. And for example, this one mentions must allow free passage of pedestrian or vehicles along any such street, sidewalk, or parkway. So these are some of the things that we saw in other cities that we don't currently have that you may consider. City of McAllen, so here's a couple other cities, just very quickly. They had this where I pulled the park facility item, and then number 2 I think is also, M has within 600 feet when, or for a restroom, the restroom has to be within 600 feet. Number 2 is where we found talks about vehicular also, cannot conduct sales in a stationary location if it's in a congested area that may impede vehicular or pedestrian traffic. San Antonio, we covered these before already. One other requirement that we saw, and I don't think I touched on before, I showed the picture but I didn't touch on it, is some ask for a sketch, a diagram of where they're going to be in relation to the lot or property that they're at. That could be another requirement to ensure it's in a suitable location. And then we have our local vendors that we showed last time. So any questions with those recommendations or those?
Can you go back to the first few, please? Because I want to read them with saying prohibiting after that.
Okay.
So that's a current
Just consider
policy.
that this is current, and the whole section, everything under this, is prohibited conduct for mobile temporary. So everything that we'll be talking about in these next ones is prohibited items.
But that are not currently in ordinance. This we would add to
Either
it.
modifications or adding
Okay.
additional prohibited items.
So regarding the parking on the streets, I'm a little bit confused with the wording. Can you just be more specific so that we...
So there's a couple different ways of looking at it. One could be to outright prohibit it from any public right of way. Just stop there and just not allow it on any street. And then the next thing, which we have it here and it's in your packet as a suggested item, is what San Antonio does, and prohibit it in the central business district unless they have approval from the city. And then an alternative to that could be anywhere in the city requiring approval.
Could we designate areas? I know that we had
As we
to-
discussed.
as we discussed. Let's say the ordinance would read it's prohibited throughout city in public streets. However, the city will designate these streets on these dates for mobile food vendors. I don't see that there.
And that's the thing, yeah, that's what I'm a
Right?
little bit worried,
Yeah.
because it's kind of generalized, so I want to make sure that they do understand that we are allowing them in a way, but orderly manner, and in certain places that we will make sure that in every, I don't know how many blocks from, I mean, in every subdivision, let's put it that way, or any area like downtown, we're gonna have a specific area where everybody can just park and in an orderly manner.
For example, we had spoken about that. This is an example. Let's say we allow them on Plaza San Juan, right? On a certain date around the plaza, we can have food vendors. But that's something that would have to be regulated. You sign up with the city manager's office or with the city, right?
So that was the intent of this, to not be too specific and get into the designated
Okay.
areas, but essentially they would come to the city for approval and the city would have those designated areas. You know, we can formalize a system, maybe even have it on our website and show what the designated areas are,
So
but they would go through the approval process.
the way
Okay.
that item 4 reads right now, a mobile food unit will not operate a mobile food unit on a public right-of-way in the central business district without approval from the city manager. So the way that it's written now, they just wouldn't be able to do this downtown. They could
They
park
could do
anywhere
it
else in
anywhere
the
else.
city.
Or it could be anywhere in the city. The option is we can say on any city street.
But, correct, as it's written now, they could do it in any other street outside the central business district, outside the downtown area. And again, that's what City of San Antonio currently has in place. Was there other-
So in the city of San Antonio, for example, you can put a food truck somewhere else in the city that's not downtown?
I think they also have in not residential zones.
Right.
In other business zones, yes. And they do have basically what council's talking about as well. They are allowed in the central business district, but with
Right.
approval. They have a certain system and designated areas, and they kind of have a lottery system of who gets to pick, who gets which designated area.
I think that's a fair way of, it's my opinion, of going about it to respect the brick and mortar businesses, right? And not have an influx of mobile food trucks that might interfere with traffic or something. But give them the opportunity to set themselves up also on certain days.
Okay. Did I cover your question on this one?
Yes.
We can even work to the point where we can do like scheduling, you know, from this time to this time at this section on this day, things of that nature, so that we can, you know, make it so that it'll be friendly as well.
Right.
What I want to make sure, in my humble opinion as well, is that every area in the city, within the city, we can still be on where we are at right now, that it's anywhere, but we, in an orderly manner, again, I mean, give them the opportunity to choose the areas, but within a certain space, and as we said, a park, but everywhere in the city that we have several spaces available, but every day of the week, for them to go through the city, but so that they are sure 100% that they will have an option, because it's kind of, we still have them in the air that yes, we don't want the brick and mortar to suffer, but at the same time we want them to succeed and have their businesses. So maybe just to balance it out, just to already have specifically a lot of options where to go every day of the week without them losing a day or two, and then from there say, okay, this is what it's already approved by the city manager or by the city, and now choose where you want to go in a certain day, so that now we have a schedule.
I think that's the intent.
But
Right,
I think
right,
That's
the
kind of
intent,
what the only issue is that right now we don't have specifics, right?
Yeah,
That we
and
can
usually
say.
you don't get that specific in the
Right, you
ordinance
don't get
either.
that specific.
You maybe allude to a system, and then separately you have your system, because then it kind of ties you down to if you want to change a zone or add a street.
So,
Yeah, because
pretty
we're still in
lengthy
the air in
ordinance.
some
In the
ways.
ordinance, you cannot specifically, we're gonna permit parking in this street.
if we're talking timelines, if we approve this today, what's our turnaround time to be able to deliver a concrete answer for the mobile food vendors?
Well, this would be a first reading, correct, City Sec? Yeah, so this would be a first reading, we would need to get the 3 in that time. I would say we could start working on a system and a
And
program.
what would enforcement look like between first and second reading, and between second and third reading?
And we're still allowed to make changes through the
Right.
readings, correct?
Right.
So let's say you approve
We can
as is
technically-
right now, you can tweak it at the second reading, which can be as soon as Thursday. Well, actually, no, not Thursday. As soon as next Tuesday.
22nd.
Yes.
Because if we move to table, if not mistaken, then we start
then
again
we
with
start
third,
all
and
over.
we make them lose another.
Right, so
Technically, we cannot enforce it until
until,
after.
yeah,
And that was my main concern.
Officially
Yes.
publish it.
until that, yeah.
But we want to make sure that we're
But-
moving forward.
And we
getting a
can still
solution.
modify it, and
Right.
between this reading and the next one, maybe
Yes.
we come up with a draft where it's like, okay, we already designated this streets, these parks. That way, the food vendors know that they're gonna have options.
Can you pull up this slide with the restrooms? I'm concerned with the feasibility of the restroom option.
This one, I'm not sure which one were you referencing. These are not in there. These are not part of these are just something else to consider, because I saw them on several other cities.
Oh, okay.
They're not in the actual
This is not part of
ordinance.
the existing, like, for this first reading, this is not in there. These are just other items to consider. If you would
Okay.
like me to make some amendments for next reading.
Okay.
But as of right now, the restroom is not a requirement.
Okay. I mean, at any point, I'll entertain a motion by either councilwoman or councilman. So, do you have a recommendation, Mr. Mahon?
I feel comfortable with the way it's presented for your review, with a couple of those changes. They're fairly minor. We stuck with, again, we didn't go too drastically different from what we currently have. I did see plenty of other cities with far more restrictions, but I feel comfortable in this presented version that you received,
And this, okay.
which is, the ones that we covered here. Removing the leaving them unattended, because I think that's something that's been in practice for as long as I can remember.
That makes sense.
I think there's consensus on that.
Okay. This one is just a wording change, 100 to 100 feet,
Okay,
unless it's on private property.
sure.
Currently, it does not have the consent. That was just something else to consider, but the top part is what the wording currently is changing, or proposed change would be to 150, and then unless it's on private property.
Okay,
And then currently, it's a central business district only that would require city manager approval. Anywhere else in the city on public right-of-way would be allowed.
so you would recommend to modify that to say prohibit anywhere in the city, right?
That, I mean,
That would be,
In
way-
designated areas, maybe?
The way we have it is
And change
central
the-
business district, because I think that's the main area that the city's,
Okay,
And I think for clarification purposes for the public, the ordinance would read that we're prohibiting the mobile food truck anywhere in the city with the exception of a permit. So that means that you are allowed to apply for a permit and you are allowed to operate within the city as long as you have that permit, correct?
and it's within the designations that the
Right.
city would make available for food
As well.
vendors.
All right. Exactly.
yep. And if they wanted it to be in the central business district, part of that would go through a special review. City manager's designated, I guess, team or committee would look at that.
Okay.
And also, does council feel comfortable with leaving it as central business district, or would you prefer that to be expanded to anywhere in the city?
Personally, I would say anywhere in the city.
Would every time they move to a different location, would they be required to pay those $150? Or they?
No.
No, that's a one
It's a one-time.
time.
But it does bring to another good point is if they wanted to move a different public right-of-way location that they didn't get an approval for, they would need a new request for a new right-of-way location.
What happens to the people that want to move Monday one day, Tuesday in another place?
If they submit and say, here are the 3 or 4 or 5 locations we would like to be rotating through, I think they can all be reviewed at one time through the
Right.
city's review process. So I don't think
Sure.
there should be no issue with that. They would just need to tell us those locations that they have in mind.
Right.
We would give them options, right, as to where they want to go, as to where they can go.
Yeah. And so, again, this is the first reading,
This is the first one.
so.
So we can approve it as is, and then next week you bring us
The
some
changes.
ideas, ¿verdad? And then you just tell us, hey, listen, let's add this, or let's consider this.
Yeah.
So with item number 4, the committee that you're discussing, I just have concerns about the execution of coming up with said committee and then what that would look like on an ongoing basis.
It would be that, basically, I would sit down with my economic development team, my planning team, and we would, sit down and look at the best spots for some of these locations. It wouldn't necessarily be
With the
somebody
intent to pick spots where they're gonna be successful.
Right, exactly. Where not only will it be successful, but it will service the community too,
Sure.
right? Because it's also going to service the residents. So it'll be a win-win for everybody. It wouldn't be like a committee that you guys would appoint, right? It would be more like something that we would do internally.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Let's move forward.
What's that?
I mean, yeah, let's move forward. I'll make a motion for the second reading to make changes.
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion to approve these suggested items? Okay. We have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Cruz. Do we have a second?
I'll go ahead and make a second.
Okay, we have a second by Councilman Diaz. Discussion?
Hold on, Ms. Ramon says she can hear everything, but we can't hear her.
Ms.
Do you wanna
Ramon,
ask if she wants to make a motion?
well, that's gonna be hard.
Yeah,
If we
Counselor?
can't hear, we cannot.
Yeah, we can't.
And she
We
just
can't.
texted me the same thing.
okay.
So
sounds
Okay.
good.
ask
Okay.
her to just get off, or if she wants to try
Yeah.
again, because there's no use in her just
Okay.
wasting her
Right,
time.
so
Okay.
we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Moving on to item 10, consideration and possible approval of an ordinance amending section 13B 2, 5, 6, 8, C, 5, 9, E 11, Appendix A, zoning ordinance of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Eagle Pass, Texas, updating home occupations, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item is on home occupations, and I'll cover quickly the intent, and generally what we see in a lot of other cities is to allow for people to do certain businesses out of their home, which will not impact their neighbors, which will not cause a nuisance to their surrounding. Generally, residential areas are intended for residential use, but there are certain things that a person can do as an occupation or business out of their home without disturbing the character or nature of that. The following home occupations shall be permitted. This section, this is the section that it is an ordinance, and the way I'm presenting it here, I'm showing copied, what it shows, and then red line with highlighted suggested change. So hopefully we could kind of see everything that's existing and proposed all in one time. So first one that's allowed, dressmaking, sewing, and tailoring. Next one, previously said painting, sculpturing, or writing. Minor change, mostly just in the wording. Artist, author, sculptor, photographer. This is just the way I saw a lot of other cities worded it a little differently. 3, telephone, answering, or soliciting. 4, home crafts such as model making, rug weaving, lapidary. And I had to Google that one. That one is like arts and crafts with stones and different things like that. I'm not sure anybody who knew what lapidary was before this. 5, tutoring. Our previous said limiting to 2 students at a time. Several cities I found said 3, so it seems like a reasonable. I don't think 2 or 3 students would really impact the neighbors. 6, home cooking and preserving. That's how the wording was. What we suggest to add is as allowed under Texas cottage food law, because I believe just the home cooking and preserving may have misled people to believe they could do more cooking than what is actually allowed per state law.
Right.
7, computer programming, and 8, this is a new line, and essentially every city other city I compared to had a line for office facility, such as accountant, architect, attorney, engineer, consultant. This is something that council would want to consider adding or not, but I put it in there because I found most of them did have that. They even had examples of doctor's office and other more specific dentistry, very specific, that I would not necessarily see it as a home occupation, but many cities permit that. Texas cottage food law, very quickly, is the rule that essentially regulates what you can do out of your home without needing permits or regulation from the local entity in terms of making food products. So what is allowed? And this is copied directly from Texas Cottage Food Law's website. Any food excluding meat that does not require time or temperature control to prevent spoilage. Next one, baked goods that do not require refrigeration, such as cakes, cookies, breads, and pastries. And specifically those that don't have toppings that would require refrigeration, because that would then make it prohibited. And then whole, uncut, frozen fruits or vegetables. I think it's another very popular thing with the spices and the different things that we like to put on there in our area. So only whole, uncut fruits are allowed out of a home base.
Yeah, a lot of people sell like candies, like all that is allowed. Like
things that are not, candies, nuts, jellies, and jams that are preserved in a certain way. Anything that basically does not go bad if you leave it out on the counter. Those are generally allowed out of the home. Not allowed meat, dairy, obviously those need refrigeration. Anything requiring refrigeration. Another thing specified is gross annual income from home-based food products over $50,000 is not allowed. And wholesale. So if you, prepackage something to sell to distribute through HEB for you or something like that, that would not be allowed. You would need to sell directly to consumer. Next is the list of prohibited home occupations. This again is directly from our website, from our ordinance. Animal hospitals, dancing studios, exercise studios, mortuaries, private clubs, restaurants. Number 5 is restaurants is how it's listed. I would I'm recommending adding and catering businesses because it's essentially the same thing. Doing all the cooking, preparing the hot food, and then taking it to a different location still violates Texas cottage food law. And so I think adding that would be more clear for somebody who might not understand. If they just saw restaurant, they might not realize that it also includes that type of catering. Stables or kennels, automobile body shop, occupations involving explosives or other hazardous material. And number 9 is also a suggested add-on, which I saw in many other cities, which is on-premise retail sales, except garage sales as otherwise provided in this code. And that would just generally keep people from becoming a mini store where people are constantly coming in and out buying their items, and especially try to avoid people putting things right in their front lawn, for sale, maybe barbecue pits or different types of items. So on-premise retail this item would help eliminate that, and it clearly says on-premise. It's specific to say that because nowadays online sales is a very popular thing, so that would still be allowed. They could prepare their item and do ship it out. So those would be the yellow areas which recommended changes. Performance standards. There's several other rules, so it's outside of clearly saying what's allowed and what's prohibited. There are also performance standards per ordinance that I'm sure you've reviewed. It's in your packet. It's part of ordinance. Did you want to cover any of these performance standards specifically? One thing that I found in some other cities, not in all, that we may consider looking at is a maximum floor usage square footage wise. I saw several that put in either 20 or 25%. Essentially, the whole purpose of this is that it's an incidental use. The home business is an incidental use, not the whole reason why you have that property. So I saw several cities that put basically a quarter of your house or thereabouts was the max that could be for the home business. The rest should be for home use. If not, it's basically not even a home anymore. So that would be one that's not in the recommended change, but it's something I did find very interesting and wanted to present for your consideration. Something else I saw, just to show you very quickly, I saw City of Round Rock prepared a mailer. It looks like kind of a twofold mailer, and it shows what's allowed, what's not allowed. It explains kind of reasons why, in addition, why there's home occupation rules, contact information, and different things. So this could be something else maybe we consider if any changes are going to go into this ordinance. Maybe we do something to help educate the public on the changes and the reasons for it. So one of the cities I looked at, they also, the reason I wanted to show this was personal grooming with one customer at a time by appointment is the way they have it. I think that could be an additional potential that maybe people would do out of their home that probably would not create a nuisance for neighbors. So that may be one to also consider. And that concludes the presentation on the home occupations. Any questions?
How would this affect, a lot of people do plate sales, like to benefit somebody that's going through a rough time, medical expenses, something like that.
There's a special event permit specific for plate sales. And I believe there is a restriction on how many times a year it can be doing. You can't say I have a plate sale every week for, whatever the cause may be. So, yeah, there's a way to do that would not be prohibited by the home occupation rules.
So the city does give out that permit if somebody comes and says, hey, I'd like to do this plate sale for something?
Honestly, most don't come get the permit. They do
Right.
have plate sales on their own, but that would be the appropriate way to do that.
Okay. So as of right now, the city doesn't regulate home businesses that cook meats?
As of right now, we've gone through a process to try to identify, where it's taking place, but we have not. We started to address this, and this was right around the time the pandemic started, and at that point, we kind of focused our efforts on several other areas, and so we basically have not been addressing that.
I mean, I think it's definitely an item that deserves our attention. If you have people cooking food in mass amounts, right, and the whole safety issue.
It's a top issue, yeah.
That's a top issue. at the same time, I understand that a lot of people depend on this income for their soul, just to live, to pay the bills. So I understand that this is going to be a tough subject, but it's something that it needs to be addressed.
Along the lines of safety, I do think that the safety of our community is very important. I do think that the time frame, introducing both of these items at the same time, I feel like a lot of our community members, these two line items affect more or less the same community members. And so I'm concerned a little bit about the principles of economic justice and what that might do for our city. I'm concerned with, with a limited amount of resources and a situation, we're just coming out of COVID, probably still in the last phases of COVID. So there's still a lot of economic impact to our area. So I'm concerned about the safety of our community in other ways. So not necessarily through health and safety, but also, with possible crime rates going up. If people start to lose options for income development, I feel like we need to, as a city, prepare and move towards that. It is something that needs to be addressed, but I think that we need to address it in a little bit more of a gradual process.
And also protecting the people with restaurants, as we discussed before. So I think it is the right time.
I think it was touched on, like you said, with the whole, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, then the pandemic started. We did shift it was bad, so we did put our attention there. But let me ask you a question. So right now, if somebody is selling meat out of their house, our food inspector can't go in there and to make sure that they're cooking to the right temperature, that everything is done in a safe manner, correct?
That's correct, and that's the biggest point. I'm glad you're mentioning that one. All of the food safety, the state requirements and food safety, none of that's checked out of the home. If anything, the state does have the authority to go in if there's a cause for believing there may be some type of violation or food risk to others. But as us, the food inspector, health inspector, and local authority, we cannot go into a home to inspect for these type of things.
Have you looked at other cities our size to see what they do if they prohibit or some way restrict people from selling meats, dairy out of the house?
I didn't look too specifically because it's a state law, state rule. It's just strictly prohibited. It carries, I believe, a 20 or 25,000 extremely high level fee to violate these type of rules because of the huge risk of sickness and illness and those type of transmitted diseases. So no, I didn't go into too closely in a lot of other cities because this is more of just a general state thing that's broadly enforced. And I guess just to touch on some of the points Councilman Diaz was making is it wouldn't be necessarily we're not changing the rules very much here. Is just more of educating and putting the information out to make sure people are aware that it's a violation to do what is sometimes being done in the home setting. So this is not so much making it really stricter, it's more enforcing, I guess, educating and advising that enforcement will be taking place and following suit.
What would enforcement look like, and what would our timeframes be on that?
That could go, I guess, based on the recommendations of council or city manager, but essentially it's a very sensitive, very dangerous subject to continue risking, foodborne illnesses. So I would assume that we would start contacting the people we are aware of are believed to be doing home-based food business right away. Advise them that if they are, show them what the penalties and the state penalties are for that. Ask them to, the plan that we had started prior to the pandemic was showing them all the rules, showing what their options were. We had a packet through SBDC and showing them some loan options, because again, the thing is not, we're not trying to shut people down or stop people
Right.
from what they're doing. We're trying to guide them into compliance, where they can continue selling, but meeting the state and local requirements. So we have a packet where we had prepared to start doing this, and that would be, I think, the idea we would continue is providing them the information, telling them the potential fines that they could face, and then trying to guide them into, what we were looking at is showing them, how to get into a food truck business, or we were working with economic development and showing where some
Incentives.
locations where you could potentially set up a restaurant. So that was the goal of what we were hoping to do with this initiative.
Yeah, Councilwoman Cruz has a good point. I mean, we have city incentives, and that's a goal, right, to get these people in their own brick and mortar business. Yes?
No, and I was worried also on the house businesses. It is a residential area. You have the proper drainage for regular use. And when you don't have grease traps, it can complicate more and beyond measure for other complications overall. So I think now everybody's aware. It's just that they started just losing sight of what the regulations were.
Right.
So I think it's a good time to start doing it right.
It's like you say, we're kind of just maybe enforcing something that it's already there.
Yes.
Right now, that's not allowed. It's being done in the community, but it doesn't mean that it's legal.
Correct. If anything, it's just clarification to make, if anybody misunderstood what the ordinance allowed.
And again, we want people to succeed, our citizens to succeed, to have businesses, but just doing it the right way.
Have
And the
any
fair share.
have any citizens shown interest in some of the development that you've shown them in terms of like the loan options that we have available through the city, the incentive plans that we have? I know that we've had a couple of grants come through. Have any of our local business owners shown interest in moving out of their homes?
Well, we haven't, we just won. We kind of started like as a pilot,
Okay.
and then, we had to halt at that point. So we really have not spoken to many. In general, some like food truck businesses or some smaller operations that are working out of the county who want to come in, start doing business inside city limits, they have shown interest like that, and I think we actually even have some packets that economic development has provided to us. So we give them the information and direct them to economic development to see what grants or different incentives are available to them.
If I
I think
may.
we go back to, we want to make sure that things are being done correctly, in a safe manner, in a legal manner, even though some people might be upset, right? But this is something that needs addressing, and it's important. The health and safety of our community is a priority, like you say. Council?
And it's a fair decision. So I would like to make a motion for approval of these changes, if I may.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Cruz to approve the changes as stated in this presentation?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second? And Ms. Ramon, just to make sure, can you hear us? Nothing.
Ms. Ramon, can you
Nothing.
hear us?
I mean, at this point, I'll,
She's absent.
okay.
It's just a quorum of 3.
I'll relinquish my chair, and I'll second Councilwoman Cruz's motion. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Mayor, and this is the same thing. You will go through 3 readings, and if anything comes up between now and then,
We can change it.
correct.
Correct. All those in favor? Against? Okay, we have 2 in favor, Councilwoman Cruz, myself, and 1 against, Councilman Diaz. So we just continue to the next item, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 11, consideration and possible approval of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eagle Pass, Texas, supporting the improvements to the Camino Real International Bridge, Coahuila 2000, proposed by the local, state, and federal governments of Mexico. This is an item that we put on the agenda. We had a meeting with Mr. Claudio Bres last week. Now he's working with the state government of Coahuila, and they were talking about the importance of us looking to amend and expand the international bridge. As you all know, we depend on the bridges. The bridges are very important to our local economy. And Mr. Bres stated in that meeting that the Mexican government is already going to do everything possible to expand the bridge and increase capacity. So I think it's very important that we also get ready on this side and as a local municipality to make sure that the growth is there on both sides of the bridge, Mexico and the United States. We discussed that in order to increase the capacity of the Camino Real bridge, we would have to go and ask for an amendment to expand the bridge. A presidential permit, those are to start another bridge, and that could take up to 10, 15 years. So we discussed just an amendment to the existing bridge that would expedite the time and let us improve and increase capacity. I think this is something very good for the city of Eagle Pass, that we look into it immediately and we start the process of amending so that we can expand the bridge. So with that said, would anyone like to add anything? Councilwoman, Councilman? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Cruz.
I'll second.
A second by Councilman Diaz. Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 12, consideration and possible approval of a resolution appointing members to the Main Street Advisory Board of the City of Eagle Pass.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We have 3 appointings pending. I don't know if you are all ready.
You know, I was going to ask Mr. Shannon, would you like to be reappointed? I know you're in the audience. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Sure.
I think you're...
I'm 2 years in, I think.
Yeah, I think you're still
Yes,
eligible.
you're eligible to serve another term.
Okay,
Would you be appointing him in your?
sure. And who else needs to appoint someone?
Ms. Cruz.
I will appoint Chris Luna, Mr. Chris Luna. He already accepted.
And we have one at large. Does anybody have a name at large? We also have Miss Cynthia Ortiz. She was also interested in serving, and she's also in the downtown area. She's a business owner.
Since we already appointed someone, we could do it?
Yes, because this person is at large.
Okay. If she's interested and she's going to be at the meetings, of course, I'm okay with having her serve.
If you're all in, okay. I just need a motion and a second.
I'll make
Okay.
a motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Diaz to approve Mr. Shannon,
I'll
Mr.
second.
Chris Luna, and Ms. Cynthia
Ortiz.
Ortiz, and a second by Councilwoman Cruz. Discussion, all those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Item 13, other business. Consideration and possible awarding/rejection of request for proposals for RFP 2022-003 for the Camino Real International Bridge Administration Building. Mr. Rodriguez.
Mayor, Council, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As you all aware, we've been working on the project for the Bridge Administration Building for quite a while now. We finished our design, went through the bidding process, and we did receive 2 bids, one from Tryon Construction and one from Frontera Construction. So with RFPs, the process is that it goes before a committee that's formed by the city manager, and they come up with a recommendation. And of course, they weigh price as a major consideration, but they also take references and previous work history. So after interviews were conducted with both firms, the panel members unanimously recommended Frontera Construction. The RFP amount is $4,865,000. Now, I have to make a special point on this because there is, when it comes to funding, this is over what our budget had called for. So what we're requesting is to award and authorize city manager to negotiate. So the design team has identified several points that may be negotiated down to get us within budget. So that's what we're hoping to achieve. Ultimately, by just authorizing him to negotiate, we can come back to council with a final product once once we set all the terms that we feel comfortable
Okay.
moving forward with.
So right now, it's just so we can authorize negotiations, nothing final, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, unless you want to also give him the authority to execute also. Or do you want him to bring back?
I'd like to bring it back.
We can, let's bring it back. Okay. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Councilwoman Cruz to approve the city manager to negotiate with Frontera.
Frontera Construction.
Do we have a second?
I'll make a second.
Second by Councilman Diaz. Discussion. All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 14, discussion and possible action on the set schedules for meetings of committees/boards appointed by city council. Madam Secretary, or?
This is
So-
an agenda item.
This is
Mr.
an
Diaz?
agenda item that I wanted to bring to the table. I just wanted to make sure that our boards, right, so we are requesting quite a bit of our boards when it comes to serving on these boards on a volunteer basis, right? And so I think that part of this is just a reminder, more than anything, for our staff, right? In order to adhere to the highest level of compliance, I think that our boards would be best served by adhering to our schedule. I think it gives us an opportunity for our board members to be present and active and stay engaged. It also prevents things from falling through the cracks, right, and staying on a set schedule. And so I do see a couple of the boards that have not been initiated yet, one of them being the Mental Health Board. But for the time being, like that's the thing that I wanted to bring to the table for discussion.
Yes.
So
So after speaking with Councilman Diaz, I did make sure that, because he brought a good point to us. Many times we don't, although we do have to give them the 72-hour notice, we're not necessarily adhering to some of these, especially the advisory board meeting, not necessarily the statutory board meetings like the P&Z and the Board of Adjustments. But on the advisory board meetings as well as the others, we do want to make sure that we start adhering to those timeframes. And there are going to be some that we are going to have to bring as special call meetings, just like we do with City Council, and that's fine as long as we give them the proper 72-hour notice. But I have informed my directors, the ones that have oversight on boards, to be more cognizant of this and also be more sensitive to our volunteers when they, as they apply their time and efforts to serve on our boards.
Absolutely. As you know, many of these, I think all these positions, people are doing it on a volunteer basis.
Yes, it is.
So if we want them to be
Absolutely.
present, we have to give them ample notice from everybody has a busy schedule. So I'm glad Councilman Diaz put this on the agenda.
Yeah. I will say that some of the boards are very busy, P&Z and Main Street and some of the others, but those, many times we do have to have special call meetings, but we will make that special effort to make sure that we let them know way in advance, or more in advance.
Okay. Do we have a motion to set the schedules for meetings of our committees and boards?
The schedules are already set.
Yes,
Well,
they've been set. I don't know if you
It was more of a
officially want
discussion.
them or it's just the directive, but Mr. Antuna has already, like he said,
Okay,
requested
they're
directive.
official
so-
already? Okay.
It was a discussion and interaction. At this point, it's just discussion.
Okay, just discussion. All right. Anything else?
Mayor, if I may, just because there
Yes.
were two votes that are different from what has transpired during all this time, that you guys have taken votes. So I just want to read the city charter for the general public and also for you all. There was two different items where it was only two votes in the affirmative of that. So the city charter just provides 3 members of the council, including the mayor or the mayor pro tem, shall constitute a quorum to do business. And 3 affirmative votes shall be necessary to pass any issue that might come before the council.
Correct.
So that's why those 2 items, basically, they just died and they don't move forward administration may bring them back.
Okay.
There's a full council later, and if it gets the 3 votes, then it goes on to the 3 different readings.
Fair
I
enough.
just wanted, because of the possibility of confusion or the members of the public not knowing,
What
it's in the
happened
c-
to these 2 items?
Correct,
Yes.
it's in the city charter.
Perfect, thank you. Counselor, appreciate it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn by Councilman Diaz, second
I'll second.
by Councilwoman Cruz. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you all very much.